He oppresses people who don't deserve to be oppressed. We need to be able to help them. Then personal occult involvement. That's reason number 2. And here is a remarkable passage in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 and following. There shall not
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening and welcome back to the second half of this Conversations with Lydia, with Wole and Abiodun talking about their journey of adopting, the processes, the stages, the inquiries, the panels, and the selection of their baby. The joy that it brings. It also tells me that it's actually more challenging, more scrutiny when somebody adopts a baby as opposed to having sex, conceiving, and 9 months later you're giving a baby. Care is taken, due diligence is done, but they live with their joy. Please help me welcome Abiodun and Wole again. Okay, so stage 2 is...
So stage 2,
what happens in stage 2?
They take the whole workbook that you've got, the workbook that you put together, all the information you put together about yourself, so all your life history, from all the
from when you were born,
all the milestones, birth, going to school, things like that. If there were deaths in the family, if you had loss, and all that, you put all of that in the workbook. They get a genogram of this, so they know.
Your family tree,
yeah. Siblings, parents, and as far as you can go with that. But I think they just want you to go as far as parents and siblings and children and nieces, nieces, nephews, and those sorts of things. So you put all of that together, and then in stage 2, your social worker takes that and then goes through it with you and does home visits. The social worker then does home visits, and it was once a week.
It was every week.
Every week, and for about 2 to 3 hours at a time.
2 to 3 hours. I mean, your life. They drill into your life.
They take
so it's quite invasive as well.
Very intrusive. There's no aspect of your life that they don't. They go through every aspect of your life, and they say to you, it's because, one, they want to know you. They want to know your personality for your benefit as well, because they have to try and match you with a child that suits you. And also they want to see what sort of triggers, because they say to you, the children that we have, some of them have behavioral issues, and they don't want a situation where the adoption then breaks down again after the child is placed with you. So they want to try and understand everything about you, your personality. Are there could you have, maybe because of things you've gone through in your life, could you have sort of secondary trauma from having an adopted child? So they drill into your everything. They assess your home to look at whether your home is conducive and the sort of layout, because all of that would then sort of inform how they recommend, or what sort of child they recommend for you to adopt. Yeah.
So was faith included in all of this?
Massively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Massively.
And I think when it came to faith, we were very open with them because we wanted to make them aware and be sure that we were people of faith, and that we had a faith that we held on to very strongly. And so and any child that we had will be brought up as a Christian, and that those are the values that we were going to want to input into the life of any child that we bring up. So we made that clear from the get-go that we were people of faith.
Was that an advantage or disadvantage?
It was just neutral, really, because remember I said to you that the whole purpose of the assessment is for them to know what child suits you. So what that did for us was we were able to say to them, because we are people of faith, we believed this is our one. Even in our workbook, we said all of that. It's a part of our lives. That's what we do. So that meant that also determined the sort of child that we could take on. Because when you're adopting a child, the birth parents can request that the child be brought up in a particular religion.
Okay.
Yeah, so it then informed in terms of, we made it clear that because we were Christians, there's no way that we could raise up a child in another religion, because that would be contradictory to what we believed in. So, and we also, because of that as well, because of our faith as well, we also said because of our faith, there are certain things that we cannot accept, So like I said, things like, and also in terms of names as well, we're saying because not so much because it was an issue for us, but what we didn't want to happen in terms of names, that is, what we didn't want to happen is for our child to be an announcement. We didn't want our child, as soon as people hear the name, they say, oh, hang on a minute. You're Christians.
Yeah, we know you.
We know you. So
how come
your child is bearing this sort of name? So we didn't want that. So it wasn't because we had any issue with, and as far as Wole comes from a Muslim background, so it wasn't an issue for us for us per se. It was just that we wanted to protect our child. So again, that sort of affected in terms of, but of course we got challenged by our social worker, and she wanted to say, okay, we hear you, we know what you believe in, but what if your child grows up and your child says, I'm not adopting your faith? And we said, look, at the end of the day, all you do as a parent is to bring up your child the best way that you can. Ultimately, when they become adults, they decide what they want to do. Now, you don't stop loving your children because they decided that they're going to
join and move on.
Exactly, move on and all. So even though we said a lot of these things, as social worker, we always made sure the perspective from where we were coming wasn't, because we are Christians and that's it, we are inflexible.
Balance. What you're saying,
it was always a balance. God gave us wisdom.
To be able to
wisdom
to manage it, because I think we feel sometimes that we of the Christian faith can be prejudiced versus other faiths. The system almost seems open to accept other people, and there are quite strong beliefs, but it's sometimes difficult to swallow, and sometimes we seem to be fighting if we don't apply wisdom, and bring balance, and bring balance into the conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the other myths about adoption as well. The council is not against faith.
Yeah.
And what is important when you're going through it is that you don't have a chip on your shoulders, because sometimes as Christians, sometimes especially as African Christians, we feel that they're all out to get us.
Exactly.
It's like we're looking for anti.
Everybody, we are anti-everybody.
Yes, we're looking for them around every corner.
Yes.
Anyone that's not a
Christian,
Christian,
and losing.
Exactly.
You feel they're against you, but no, it's a myth. They're not. So you have to walk with wisdom, and what that tends to bring out, especially with Christians, is that you might end up being too aggressive. about your faith, and you might want to ram it down their throats and want to go too far in trying to make them aware that yes, I'm a Christian, and what that is it. There's nothing you can do about it. My faith is so important to me that everybody else can take the running.
But everybody's faith is important to them.
Exactly.
And different things are important to different people. So
Yeah.
we have to make them aware that this is important, but we are flexible, and especially with the Christian faith, it's people misunderstand Christianity a lot. I think that because we believe what is in the Bible, that it makes us either
unrealistic or
unrealistic about other people,
about
or
life,
everybody else, and think that anyone that's not a Christian is doomed to destruction or something like that, and that kind of thing. But you just have to educate them and say, look, we believe in a God that loves everyone, and
it's about respect. I think it's about respect.
And in fact, our social worker, she said she learned so much from us. We made her aware, not just from the Christian perspective, we also made her aware from the African perspective as well. I mean, in our local authority, they rarely have African couples come out to adopt. So for her, it was quite. She said she learned a lot from us, because we made her aware. We said, look, for us, names matter a lot in Africa. We said names matter a lot. I said, my name, if someone from Nigeria hears my name, they can say a lot about me. They can say, oh, she's either from this tribe, her name means so and so. So we said to her, look, names mean a lot. So when you're recommending a child to us, please think about the name. Because what happens with adoption is, if you adopt a child, you are not allowed to change their name. It's part of the identity.
You couldn't name the baby. I mean, you could add a name.
You could add a name.
And in exceptional circumstances, you could change the name.
Change the name, but not often.
If the name was so unique that maybe
they can be traced.
There's only one of such a name in the whole world. Then yes, they could allow you to change it just for safeguarding purposes.
But you have to, their names, because it's part of their identity and part of the story that you're going to tell. That's what their birth parents named them. You are not allowed to change it. You can add
is it possible also for a baby to come without a name?
Well, not that we were aware of, to be honest. Not that we were aware of.
I suppose it's possible, but
it's possible. Or usually you would hear, the ambulance driver or the nurse,
give
the baby got given a name. It depends on the circumstance.
The circumstance.
So that's something people should be aware of, that you can't change the name, the birth name.
You
can add to the name, but you can't change the name. So it makes sense when you were saying, in terms of the name that we want our child to be called, we don't want a different name that we have to now explain each time we introduce our son to somebody.
Exactly. So we made her understand that. And in fact, she said now, even in her meetings, when she has meetings with her colleagues, she's always saying to them, if there's an African, have you thought about name? Have you thought about that? And we said to her, to be honest, we were not particular about adopting from a child that has some heritage, cultural heritage to us. We're very open about it. We said, we even told her we wanted a neutral name, a name that you can't work out where exactly the child is from. So we sort of educated her a lot. She asked us questions like, oh, you say you do Bible study, and what does Bible study mean? Things like that. What is Bible study? What is prayer? And we explained that. We said, just Bible study, you read the Bible, we sit down, we talk about it. How does it apply to our lives and all? And she said, is that something you would do with it? I said, yeah, of course we'll do with our child, but of course, at varying levels, you bring it down to their level and all. So it was just really with wisdom. We were not really ramming it down their throat that we are Christians, or we can't accept anything and all, but we just made them understand from where we're coming from, that as Christians, there are certain things that, one, because we didn't want our child to be an announcement, the whole world to know. We didn't want a name that straight away they would know that actually something is not quite right here.
And that's for the child as well, and not so
Yeah.
much for us, because for the child, if people can immediately say, oh, your name seems strange compared to your parents' names,
then you have to explain.
They
you have to
Exactly.
explain, and it
The
complicates
child
the
is
child's
constantly
narrative.
reminded that they are adopted instead of
Absolutely,
Yes, exactly.
absolutely.
a child in a family. So stage 1, stage 2, what happens in stage 3?
So when you finish your assessments and all, your social worker then draws up a report. I mean, our report was like 60 pages. That's to give you an idea of how thorough it was. Yeah, she came for 10 weeks, every single week, 2-3 hours, just drilling into our lives, basically. And then she draws up a report. She makes her recommendation. They send you the report. And that's, I must say, the adoption process, they are very open. They give you all the information you need to make a decision. I must give that to them, 100%. They are really good. They draw up the report, then they send it, then they send it to a panel. So she makes a recommendation there to say, okay, I recommend these people to adopt this type of child. They work with you as part of that assessment. They go through the sorts of issues that children might have. Which one can you accept? Which ones can't you accept? Of course, you can't go around and say, no, I'm not accepting that. I just want a perfect child, because there's really no perfect child. Mm-hmm. But you can say, actually, these ones I really cannot deal with, so you're very open about it. They also ask you what ages of children you want to adopt. But of course, obviously, your age, they will take into account how active you are. Think about the child, how, in terms of your age, we used to be able to look after a child, as you start to get older. All of those things they take into account. They ask you whether you want to adopt siblings. Do you want to adopt just the one child? Do you want male? Do you want female? So really, those sorts of choices are your choices, really.
And what they do as well, it's one of the reasons why they are so thorough with especially in stage 2, with those visits, because at the end of that time, the social worker really understands who you are as a couple, and can make the recommendation on, and with their knowledge of children, sort of children that come into care, they can make recommendations on sort of children that would be best for you. So one of the things that happened with us was we also looked at the possibility of fostering to adopt. So fostering to adopt is basically a situation where
a child is placed with you from birth.
Placed with you from birth,
yeah.
Because they have, but you start out as a foster carer for that child with a view to possibly adopting that child once you've gone through the whole process. We went through that because it's, fostering in and of itself can be quite arduous. Because there's so much.
And sometimes you don't get to adopt a child.
Sometimes you don't get to adopt that child.
Because
and so there's that uncertainty. So you might be fostering to adopt, but there's no guarantee at the end of it
that you will get the baby back.
Adopt that baby. And there's so much documentation, and essentially you are employed by
the council.
The council to take care of
look after the child.
Yes. And so there are all sorts of things and requirements that they put on you for whilst you're taking care of that child.
And you'll be having contact with the birth parents as well. If
the birth parents are in the picture, you have to go for contact with them. The court could, for instance, mandate that you must take the child for contact 2 or 3 times a week. And so that it kind of puts your whole life on hold. And when we discussed it with our social worker and we looked at the pros and cons, that knowing you guys and from the time I've interacted with you on my assessment, I think fostering to adopt is not the best route for you to take. So just let's leave that alone, even though we're open to the possibility of doing fostering to adopt. But she said, no, I'm not going to recommend that for you. What I'll recommend, but I can recommend to the panel. I can recommend to the panel that you can adopt a baby.
Which was just,
we just thought,
wow,
50, 50.
At that stage, we're 52. Yeah, we're already 52.
So how was it to have this? I know she wasn't a stranger after 10 weeks, obviously not but how was it to have somebody come to your home ceremoniously every week for 2 or 3 hours. So were you on your best behavior? Like, you had to behave. The house had to be clean. No
Yeah,
food
well,
smell,
the house had to be
no frying.
Yeah, the house have
I'm the tidy freak. So the
So
house,
you were on your zone, in your zone doubly.
yeah, I was really, I was.
I
But
remember in our what we had a WhatsApp group. I said we kept in touch
Yeah.
with others that we did the training with. In our WhatsApp group, there are some jokes about, oh, is your social worker coming? And some of them will say, yes, I'm down on my hands and knees cleaning the skirting boards now, just making sure the house is.
Yeah, we laugh, but it must have been challenging, because or like, even though I'm sure after like 10, 15 minutes, you would have relaxed into the conversation, but the tension, even when people we know are coming to visit, that 15 minutes of throwing everything in, making sure the kitchen is clean. And now that actually what you want is dependent on this person coming to visit and writing the best report or seeing you in the best light. So did you have days that you had sort of argued or disagreed, and then here comes Madam Social Worker, then you had to quickly...
Fortunately,
that never really happened to us. I mean, the thing is, we can't. So one of the first things she did, the social worker, she did the very first visit she does is they come, they assess your home, but then they also sit down and they walk through, they explain to you what the process is going to be. And you sort of agree dates in advance. Because I said to them, look, I need to know dates in advance. Because the other thing as well that people need to be aware of is that it's so time consuming. Because you have to take time off work, and we were still working at the time. Well, I was still working at the time. So you have to take time off work to go for the training. You have to take time off work to do all these assessments, and also they needed to sort of give us dates in advance, so we knew every week when she was going to come.
So stage 1, stage 2. Now you've been recommended.
You recommended. Then you go to the
panel. So both of you went to the panel for an interview.
Yes. Yeah. So you
How was that?
It's quite straightforward, really. The thing is, the point is that once the social worker once they've written their report and recommended you to panel, they've really gone through all the details, and they generally wouldn't recommend you to panel if they think that the panel will have any issues with you or with what has been written in your report. So their job really is to go through all of that and only recommend you to panel if they know that the panel will not really have any issues.
You're suitable. Yes.
You're suitable. Yeah, absolutely. So when you go to panel, it's really just
it's more of a chat, really.
Yes, they just want to.
I like the way the two of you say. Sounds so laid back. Like
it's more of a chat. They just chatted with. And funny enough, for the panel, we were told that usually they don't ask the prospective adopters questions. It's usually the social workers. So the social worker, your social worker, and her boss would attend the panel, and the panel is usually made up of about seven people. Most of them also adopted. By the way, most of them adopted.
Either adopted or
adoptees.
Okay, so the panel is full of people who've had the experience.
Yes.
Either they themselves were adopted or had adopted children.
Adoptive parents. And then of course they have like a lawyer who advises them in terms of legal there. And we got in, and straight away they just started firing questions at us. They wanted to know, because as part of the thing, a social worker said, because again, like we said, we made faith a big part of we made it clear, front and center of the whole process. So she knew we attended the church we attended, and the number of people that, of course, how large it was. So one of our concerns was, okay, if a child is placed with you, a child going into such a big congregation, it's very overwhelming for a child. So will you consider going to like a smaller parish? And we said, well, that's fine. We don't have a problem with that. So one of the questions the panel wanted to know was, why are you leaving your church? that's where your support group is. Because as part of the process, you have to say the people that will support you, you know, when you need, because adoption can be quite draining, you know, emotionally. So why are you going to leave your church? It's so they wanted to understand, and we said, no, we're not really leaving our church because it's a network of churches. We are also, it's still people that we know, and also that was one of the questions they asked us. They wanted to know what I can't really remember. Anyways,
so going to the panel doesn't seem like the easiest part. I think in
yeah,
all
it
of it.
is.
It is. Yeah, it is. Because
so how long did you wait from? So obviously the panel then says to you, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So how was that when you sort of had gone through all these weeks and I'm sure months of tests and training, but you may have sort of got an inkling, but it's different when you have it on a piece of paper saying you've been approved. Yeah. So how was that for both of you?
Yeah, it was a relief.
It was a relief that at last we've gone through this process. So at least we know this formal stage is over. Now we have to then move to the next stage, which is
The
like
practical stage.
the practical.
So all the time that you were doing the test, I mean, I know you said a friend came and when she spoke about how we are adopted children of God, that gave you peace. But I can imagine, knowing the two of you, that you were praying through every process.
We were.
You know?
We were.
Yeah,
we were. We're praying. We're saying, God, the child you're going to give to us, we don't really know. We've heard all these things, you know, they say about, they have trauma and all of that. We said, but one thing they don't take into account is the God factor in all of the things that they say, you know. So we just said, well, we hear all the things you said, but we're also people of faith. So we know that God is going to give us the very best that is for us. So we pray to God. Like we said, we were never particular about whether it will be male or female. We said to our social worker, is a child that we connect with, whether it's male, whether it's female. We're not particular.
Okay. So you got the letter saying, you know, you had been approved. How long was it before you got your baby? So we're now 52 now.
Yeah.
So it took you almost 2 years.
Yeah, no, it took us a year. So the whole process of being assessed from stage one, from when we first registered an interest to when we were approved, it was a whole year. It was 1 year.
Yeah, I think just to give people a time.
Yeah, it was 1 year.
Because yes, we were 50 when we started thinking about adoption, but we didn't start immediately then.
Yeah, we remember we did the inter-country one first. Yeah, so we then, when we decided not to go, we then went to the domestic. So again, that's probably why it took another 2 years anyway. So, and the other thing I should say is when you finish stage one, depending on if you've suffered a lot of loss, if you're still sort of grieving the loss of your not being able to have your birth child, they could put you on hold. They will put you on hold at that stage and ask you to take a break for like 6 months. They might recommend going for counseling. And so we knew some people that were in our group that were put on hold, that they couldn't proceed to stage 2 because they'd gone through, you know, they were still grieving, you know, not being able to have biological children. Also, if you've suffered a lot of loss, which both Wole and I had suffered, but because our loss, a lot of it were years ago, our social worker felt that she didn't think that there was really any need for them to put us on hold. So some people were put on hold for stage 1. And then after that, they put you on hold for like 6 months. And then you can then start.
So that you can get counseling or
get counseling.
Somehow to resolve the losses you'd have.
Absolutely, because they insist. The other thing I should also say is they also insist when you're going through the adoption process that there's no more fertility treatment.
Okay. So you stop because what's the reason for that? Please, I want you to
be. They want you to be committed to the journey of adoption, because they don't want you to sort of have one leg in both camps. They don't want you to hedge your bets, okay? Because they want any child that's placed with you that you are actually committed to having that child, and it's not.
And they don't want you to break.
It's not a substitute.
Yes,
It's not a substitute,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
They don't want you to think, okay, I'm just trying whilst I'm trying.
Just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
This doesn't work.
Committed to
So
the
it shows the importance and the value that they are placing on the
Absolutely,
child.
absolutely. They tell you, I mean, they explain to us that whilst it may seem over the top, but that what happens is adoption, the process has broken down. So a child has already been through a lot of trauma, has maybe had so many moves in their life, you know, is now placed, and then suddenly there's a pregnancy, and then that adoption breaks down because you're not committed to it, you know.
Especially if you're going to adopt a child who's already aware. Say you were going to adopt a 4 or 5-year-old.
Exactly.
So that child then has to deal with being rejected again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I think when people are adopting children who are aware, not a baby, they live in this hope that somebody is coming to take them to be their new mom and dad, or their new mom or their new dad. So if that gets broken in between, they now have the child's losses are compounded by that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So when they are approved, then you then have to then start doing the matching, trying to find the child for you. And what happens, our social worker was really good. She involved us in the process. So it wasn't like we've had people that say, oh, their social worker didn't allow them to go to the database and search for children. But our social worker gave us access to the database. So once they've approved you formally, she gave us access to view children that were up for adoption. She was looking, and we were looking based on the recommendation she made to us. Now you look at some reports. So what happens with the database? You just get a snippet. They put maybe a picture and a brief summary of the child. And in there they might say, because the child also has a social worker, and the social worker might say, this child can only be adopted by people who are aged between so and so. So some children you might see and you think, and they say, oh, well, we can't adopt because they've already put an age restriction.
Yeah. Or they could say that the child cannot be placed in a
certain area.
So if you're in that area, then you just know
that there's no point showing an interest in that child. No, so we go through. A social worker recommended some children to us. We look at it and we thought, no, this doesn't really work for us. And that's the thing is as well, that you're not forced to accept anything.
You're not just giving a
you're just not giving anything. Yeah, you also are quite involved. You can say, no, I don't want this child. But of course, it can't just be, well, I don't like the face. I don't like that sort of thing.
Yeah, it can't be for frivolous reasons.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, because
something that's in
so do you get like is that selection, I would use that word, endless, or they say after 5 offers you can't?
It's
so it's an endless.
Okay. It's endless. It's endless until you find a child that
suits you. Yes.
Yeah. It's endless. Yeah. So so from the time we were approved, so we were approved like in January of that year, and then we registered an interest in some children where the social worker came back, or some of them never even came back anyway. And then we saw.
So there can be disappointment along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you've come, into a place where you think, I can match a child to me.
Yeah. There can be disappointment.
And one thing that our social worker said, because we said, okay, we were looking through the database and looking for, because children get added and removed from the database on a daily basis. So we're looking through the database of every day, and our social worker said, you don't want to do that. Depending on how emotionally stable you are or otherwise, it can be traumatic looking at going over through the database on a daily basis, because you're seeing children that are, so many children in care, and that can affect you.
So many children in need. I think we forget that also.
Yeah, and then you can find children, and you want to express an interest in a child, and you maybe don't hear back from their social worker, or you express an interest and social worker comes back and says, oh no, we're not going to be able to place this child with you, or no, you can have disappointments along the way, even whilst going through the placement.
Yeah.
So our social worker said, don't do it every day. Give it the time. Look maybe once a week or something, and give yourself time. It's not.
Didn't do that.
It's not. It's not a.
You didn't listen.
I didn't
do that.
I
didn't pay any mind.
do that.
You were every day scrolling.
Every day, first thing in the morning, I would go and look and see what new children have come on. And what we also found out, there weren't that many, because again, one of the things we said to a social worker, and also again, on the basis that we didn't want our child to be an announcement, we wanted to be able to control who we told and didn't tell that our child was adopted. So we said to a social worker, we wanted a child that was black skin. We didn't want the mixed race. There are so many mixed race children out for adoption. And we said to her, we didn't want, because that's just an announcement. Everyone will immediately know that, how did you come about this child? And then you have to start explaining and explaining. Yeah, and we found out that there were not that many, well, at least at that time, there were not that, either because maybe social workers were not putting them on the database. We found out that there were not that many black children that were actually, although we found out later that there are so many, but they were not on the database.
Did you find out why that happens?
I don't know.
No, we don't know why that, because you would have to discuss with a lot of social workers and ask them.
Because that means those children will end up in care.
They could, and the thing is that some councils also have their own networks.
Yeah.
Okay, their own ways of adopting.
Yeah. Yes, and networks through which they place children. So it's always the children that go on the database. If they've tried their own internal methods of trying to place them with adopted parents, they don't. That sort of breaks down, or they aren't able to. Then they don't put them on. Yeah. And some other councils have the policy of putting them on the database first, or regardless of whether they're going through it. So it varies from council.
It varies from. Okay. Yeah. So when you saw your baby, how did you sort of know who saw the baby first?
Of course it was me. Who else did you think? Of course it was me.
Mommy, I always in there first. So it could have been him. It could have been a possibility.
It could have been. Yeah. Something that just go back a bit before that. It's important that you have a support network and people that you can talk to about what's happening, because I remember there was one child that we saw.
We registered an interest in,
and she this was a girl, and we thought, yeah, this looks good, this profile looks good, and so we went to one of our referees, and also a couple that are very close to us, and we talked through it, and we had concerns about what was in the profile and other things, and they helped us and talked to us and generally encouraged us. So it's important that you have a support network of people that can encourage you,
that you can reach out to,
they can talk to and help you along the way.
In fact, it's not even just that it's important, it's mandatory, because as part of your assessment, they would assess people who can support you when a child is placed with you. So it's important to have people that are close by who you can call upon. Even though when you adopt, the first few months, you are told not to really have anybody else in, so that the child bonds with you, builds a secure attachment with you. But if you are really struggling, then they might allow one or two people to come in to sort of help you and all. So it's very important that you have that support. And in fact, it's mandatory. It's not even just that it's important. It's mandatory you have that. So so at the first time, I saw our son, I just saw and I thought, wow, look at this boy, gorgeous, and so then I started reading the profile. So they don't, at that stage, they don't give you all the information at that stage. They just tell you the date of birth. They tell you whether the child is in the foster care or where the child is. They tell you a little bit of the background, a very little bit. They also tell you what in terms of a medical, because they also would have done the medical assessment of the child, what possible issues there might be in future with the child, especially if this is a baby, because at that stage they don't really know. So they put there what sort of issues might be, and my heart just knitted with this baby. I just thought, this baby, and I thought, well, so immediately we contacted our social worker and said,
"Oh, you told Wole."
I told Wole, well, I told Wole came and looked, and Wole said,
So
yes,
how was it for you, Wole? How was it for you? Did you agree immediately, or?
Yeah, I looked at the profile. I thought, yeah, I can. This looks all right. Yeah, being pragmatic and practical as well. Looking at thinking, okay, there might be issues here. There's some issue with birth parents and what they went through, and so the child might have some trauma at the end that might grow up with issues here. But then these are some of the issues that when we're going through the assessment with our social worker, we said, yes, we could handle these sorts of things. And I thought, yeah, I can go along with this. This looks good. And I kind of had a peace about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, all along with this, we're not just going through the motions. We're praying along the line, praying about it and so on. So we always had needed to know and have that peace from God that about it. So there's some that we would look at and we think, and so almost immediately we don't have a peace about this particular child. So would you express any interest? There was one child that social worker suggested who was having issues, and we just thought, we can't take on this child.
It wasn't the child wasn't having issues, but the circumstances and this was
around him.
This would have been a perfect cultural match, in terms of that. And we just said to our social worker, look, the circumstances, we because this is a perfect cultural match, we understand all the cultural undertones that we said to her, look, these people will trace us. There is no way that this child can be taken away that they won't trace us.
We'll be neutral.
Yeah, we just said, we said to her, no, even though, I mean, if you're looking at it from a natural perspective, that was just a perfect match in terms of, from the cultural perspective. But we said to her, no, and we didn't have any peace about it at all. Again, we talked to these, friends of ours, who's also, the lady is also a social worker, actually. We talked about it. She said, don't even go down this route at all, because this is just going to be a problem. Not with the child. The child was perfect. There was no issues with the child at all. And a much older child, 3 years old, he was a boy. And we said to our social worker, no, we don't want to have to be looking over our shoulder, be afraid that somebody's stalking you. We didn't really want that. So we kind of just dismissed that. But as soon as we saw our son, even though we hadn't gotten all the reports, felt right. We just loved him, even without, we didn't know all the background, all the history and all. So our social worker then said, okay, fine, I'll register an interest. We'll ask the social worker to send us a report. And they came back and they sent the report. And she asked for our own report as well, the social worker. And then they sent the report. So our social worker sent the report to us. And in that report, essentially the whole history of the child, their parents' history, family history, as much as they know. And they give you all the information. Any siblings, if they are siblings, they tell you any sort of potential. So they would have done a medical assessment of the child. They tell you any sort of potential issues that there might be, so that you have all the information. So we went through the report, and our social worker called us. We discussed it, and we said to her, yeah, we are still quite interested. Yeah, we've read all the things, but we still have faith in God. We know, we hear all the things you said to us, because she said to us, well, with this sort of medical history of the parents and all, this child might develop all this, blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, we've heard you, but our hearts are still needed. we hear, we know. One thing, like we said,
And this was before you saw him. You
way before we saw him.
Yes.
But I mean, you don't even get to see at this stage.
No, at this stage.
At this stage, there's no
child.
scene. You don't get to see the child.
The best we had was a video, because they can put videos as well on the database.
Okay, on the database. So you had the best that you could have.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
there was a short video there of him in one of these bouncy
Walker.
things,
Not Walker. What's it called? Because it wasn't
Like a bouncer.
Yeah,
a bouncer.
bouncer,
Yes, and he was in there and bouncing around and generally being jolly and
yeah,
playful.
it was such a lot. I mean, we've got all of that as part of the history for him now, and all the records and all that. And we said to our social worker here, we were still quite interested. We've read the report, we prayed about it, and we were really still interested, So she then went back to the child social worker, and they said, okay. And then we thought, okay, we'll wait to hear whether, because at that stage, the social workers, after going through our report, they could say, no, we don't want these people. But they came back and said, okay, they would like to come and visit us. So they came, they visited us. Again, they went through the child's history. They tried to understand us. They looked at the house. Where is the child going to stay? And all of that. And then they went back and said, okay, they will come back to us with a decision as to whether they think we are a match for the child.
And you can see God's hand working through all of this, because, it's a different council that the child was in from the one.
So you are living in one borough.
One
The
local
baby is coming from a different local authority.
And that local authority, they had to actually take
permission
to place the child out of county.
Okay.
So normally they would look to place a child within the county,
within the same county,
in order to be able to provide all the necessary support and so on. So to place the child out of county, they needed to get special permission for that, because there's more cost involved with travel and then support as well, because the child's council local authority are the ones that provide
the support for you once you've adopted
a
child. Yeah.
So when it's out of the county, that could complicate things, and so they had to get done. They sought for that permission. I don't know who had to give the permission, but it was granted, and they say, they can place the child out of county. So that's another thing that God worked out.
And God worked out.
And the funny thing, because when we registered an interest in our son, they don't tell you the heritage in terms of the cultural heritage and all of that. You would not believe it. When the report came, the boy had a connection, because people think I'm Yoruba. I'm not Yoruba. I'm actually from Edo State. Yeah, the boy had a connection to me.
Wow.
Yeah. When we saw that,
wow.
This
can only be God. The boy was connected to me and also connected to Wole.
Culturally.
It was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. All of that we didn't know. It was when the report came that we found out that he was culturally linked to us. And we just thought, wow, this could only have been God. And then because he was so young, we said to the social worker, how is it that? We said, well, they tried to place him with other people that they knew. There were 2 had already been matched, so they couldn't place them. And then there were 2 of us. One was a lot younger than we were, and they were considering that, But then, for some reason, they just decided, no, we kind of like these other people. We like, their whole reports and all of that.
Favor.
I'm telling you, it was big favor. It was big favor. So they then said, so they approved. They decided to place him with us, and then because it was out of county, we had to then go. So when the child was placed with us, he was quite young, but he was in foster care at the time, and the foster carer, what's the word I should use? She couldn't immediately. They have something they call transition, where you go to see the foster carer, and the foster carer gradually starts to hand over care of the child to you. Yeah, but because the foster carer, also had young children, she didn't really want to start that process until the school term was over. So we had to then wait from when he was matched with us. We had to then wait for about 3 months for when he was matched with us before we could start.
How was that? How was that? Did you get to see him in between, or you had to stay away from him?
The
because,
local authority, some councils allow you to see. Our local authority where we live allow you to see a child, but the local authority
in the other county,
they said no. And so the first time we actually met him face to face was when we started transition.
Okay, yeah. Which was 3 months after.
Which was told
that he would be.
All we had to go on was the video that we had seen online, and I think we requested some additional photos, which they sent.
Which they sent to us.
But that was it. We never actually got to meet him until we started transitions.
Yeah.
So how was the first day? Because I could ask you how was the waiting, but let's just move to the first day because of time.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the first day was we're a bit nervous and all, but we got them. Trust God that it will all go well. And it's like we went up to the house, knocked on the door. They were expecting us, of course, and then as soon as we came in, it was like foster care. Well, she's an old hand anyway. She'd been doing this for many years. And it's like, yeah, come in, and she was carrying him, and yeah, would you like to hold him? And it was like just matter of fact, and no fuss.
He was so gorgeous. So gorgeous. He was so gorgeous. Because we hadn't seen him, you still have all this neatly, okay, you've seen photos, you've seen video and all, but man, when we saw him in person, oh my God, he was even more gorgeous than the video. So we started. So what they do with the transition, they just said it's like a 2-week program where you go there. So the foster carer gradually starts to let you spend more time with the child. So the first day was 2 hours, because they don't really want to traumatize the child. Sometimes, like you said, if the child is much older and aware, they don't want it to be too much for the child. We should actually backtrack a little, because what happens with transition, before the transition itself, you would have done a video of your house, and you would have showing all the things you've put in place for the child. By then you would know their sort of favorite food, their favorite color, their favorite program. So you would do all of that video together. They train you, by the way, on how to put this. Or you do a photo book. For our son, we did a photo book because obviously he was quite young and all.
Yeah, so doing the video was pointless.
So doing the video was pointless and all.
For older, more aware children, you
actually do a video
of your house.
Yes, to show this, help them know this is where they're going to. This is where they're going to their room. This is the kitchen. This is the living room.
Absolutely.
And I remember something that what the social worker said is that if you're going to do a video, or this was during the training, actually, this was not a social worker that said, but during the training, they said, when you're doing that video, don't forget to put in the toilet. I said there was one child that was being placed, and they showed the parents, adopted parents, did the video of the whole house and left out the toilet, and the child said, "No, I'm not going to that house. They don't have the toilet."
What a clever child.
Yeah, so when before the transitions, the child social worker would have started sort of preparing their minds. They would play the video. We had to take a blanket. You would sleep with the blanket for a long time. And it said you send it over to the foster carer. So the child starts to get a sense of smell of the parents to be, and then they just play that video over and over and over and over. And the child is saying, "Oh, look at my name. Oh, they know my name. Oh, that's my favorite food. How did they know my favorite food?" So they just psychologically they start
Prepare the child
yeah,
for the transition.
for the transition and all. So when you go, they gradually increase the time you spend with the child. So for us, we did a week out of county with the foster carer, and then the second week, the foster carer came over to our county, and then she was dropping off the child in our house, and then gradually increasing the time the child was spending with us. So we did that for like a week as well, and then the final day, that was it.
Yeah.
You got left with him.
We got left with him.
We literally got left holding the baby.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing so openly and with such joy, which obviously has come through.
And like you can say that, I mean, we can honestly say that it's only God, because all the things that were in his report about him and about possible
his development and all of that.
The developmental issues. In fact, one of the things in the report said that they'd done a hearing test, for instance, and that it seemed he'd failed the initial hearing test, and they had to do it again, and which he passed. So there was some possibility that he could have trouble with his hearing. So our son, his hearing is pin sharp.
He hears
He hears the slightest. He can tell you what is happening, what you're doing, simply by the sound that you made. If you open any door in the house, he knows which door it is. If the postman puts the letters,
we would hear it.
We would hear it. He say, "Oh, postman."
Oh, bless.
Yeah, they say he might have speech problems, speech defect. In fact,
nothing of the
from
sort.
the minute he wakes up till the minute he goes to sleep, he's chatting your ears off.
Thank God for a good report. A good report.
It's really just.
And it reminds me of a scripture that says God makes everything beautiful in His own time.
Absolutely.
That's so true.
Okay.
So
Go on. You're about to say.
I was just going to say, it's just the joy of seeing a child grow and know that you are able to input into this child's life, and also that it's humbling as well when you realize that this child is looking at you and copying the things that you do. So you just want to be able to say, I need to put the best into this child, and it helps you as well to think, change the way that you do things, the way that you behave, because you know that what you're doing, the child is copying it.
So from what you're saying now, there's no difference if he was a biological child to an adopted child, because that's all a child needs is love and you to be open.
Absolutely. And I said I had the concern about will I be able to love the child and all. I mean, the first month obviously was like, oh my God, what have we let ourselves into?
But every parent thinks that, though. Every parent.
I was like, oh my God, what are we supposed to do now? Oh, should we? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? What do I do? I don't know. I mean, by the end of the day, we are so exhausted. And the other blessing God gave us, this child sleeps through the night. Through the night. So
you put him down at 7, and he's not up till about maybe 6:37 the next morning. Not a peep out of him all night.
So you are blessed by that. I can't tell you.
Yes,
I will say, God, you know we are over 50. We
I like that. We're over 50. So take it easy with us.
Yeah. So it's like God, He knows. We laugh about it, but in truth, God knows you. He knows the best for you. As if now we look back and we say, wow, God, it could only have been you. He is so well suited to us. So well suited. My son, because I love like interior decorating and all of that. Mm-hmm. My son, I said to him from when he came, like, no, don't touch mommy's vase. No, don't do that. My son walks past the vase, he won't touch it.
Don't touch it. Great.
So it's like, God, we just look and we're like, wow, God, only you could have done this only you could have. Now, I don't even think about the fact that he's adopted. It doesn't even cross my mind that he's adopted. He's my son. That's just it. And my heart is committed to him. I don't even remember that. Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, he's adopted. Yeah.
He doesn't care. He's just
He doesn't care either way. He's just spread that love.
all over the place.
Daddy, what's happening?
Okay. Let me ask Wole to close for us. What would you leave us with, whether it's for people who are married for a long time and are believing God, people who are thinking of adopting? What would be your sort of last word?
I think what I would say is that adoption for God was not his plan B. Adoption for God was his plan A, because when you go through the Bible, you see that his plan for us as children of God was for us to be adopted into his family. Right from the beginning, that was his plan. So adoption was God's plan A. And I think we as Christians, anyone looking to adopt or even who have children of their own should consider adoption. Well, because adoption is a good thing. There's so many children out there. What they need is a loving home. If you're able to provide a loving home, that is, you are in God's plan. It's not, maybe I should only adopt, or I can't adopt because I can't have children of my own, is why I should adopt. No, consider adoption as even part of your plan of even with your own children. If you have birth children, consider adoption. It's God's plan A, really. Adoption is well within God's plan, is within his will. It's his will for us, because he has adopted us, as the Bible says, into his family. We should extend that same love and extend that same grace to other children out there. There's so many children out there. If all the Christians, professing Christians in the UK, decided to adopt just one child, there'll be no more children up for adoption anymore.
Amen. Thank you both for coming. What a wonderful story of God's faithfulness. And I can see the joy that your son has brought to you. Long will it live and last.
Amen.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, welcome. You're welcome.
Yes, and we really, because something that Abiodun said earlier on about, they told us during the time we went through the inter-country adoption, started that, and it said, Africans don't tend not to have any support networks. We are happy. We said then, and we said that if we go through this, if we go through adoption, we'll want to be there for anyone who needs support going through adoption. So, and that offer is still open. Any support that we can give to anyone who's going through adoption, we're happy to oblige.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
What a wonderful story of love and faithfulness. Thank you for watching. My name is Lydia Khalil, and I will see you next week.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.